Hey guys, welcome back to Zane Customs. In this week's episode, I'm going to be attempting the 100 Days of Hardcore Minecraft Challenge. And I know what you guys are thinking. Isn't that gaming challenge that was started by Luke the Notable over a year ago, and then was copied by every other YouTuber in the game, some finding great success in it? And yes, that's the challenge I'm talking about, but I'm going to be doing things a little bit differently here. Those of you out there who are fans of my channel know that even though I do love Minecraft very much, this is not a gaming channel. It's a sculpting channel. So I'm not going to be gaming through 100 days of Minecraft. I'm going to be sculpting through it. So let's start at the beginning. Which oddly enough looks like we're starting right in the middle, but this is actually the earliest footage I have of anything I ever sculpted as far as Minecraft goes. And I sculpted this over a year ago, back when I really wasn't that smart about recording and doing YouTube and things like that. So I started this sculpt off in Forger, which is an app for the iPad Pro, and didn't really think about recording it until I got over to the computer. That's why it's halfway through. But as you can tell, I'm sculpting the Ender Dragon from Minecraft right now, and that's what this video is going to be. I have dedicated videos on all the mobs I've ever sculpted, but I thought it'd be fun to go ahead and make a big compilation of all the ones I've done up to this point and kind of do a riff on the 100 days challenge, because I've definitely spent over 100 days working on all these different mobs. But if you want more information on these sculpts rather than this quick cut, then definitely check out my YouTube channel, because I have dedicated videos on every single sculpt you see me working on here. So let's get into it. The Ender Dragon was the first sculpt I did for my Minecraft series, and the reason I started with the Ender Dragon is because it's one of the most recognizable and iconic mobs in Minecraft, and also I was kind of in the zone for sculpting dragons a lot at this time, so I just continued that and started sculpting this dragon, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. One kind of interesting thing is I use a lot of reference photos for my art, and obviously dragons aren't real, so I can't just look up a dragon, but there's a lot of different artistic interpretations that help, inspire you. And one thing I actually ended up looking up for this dragon was hippos, because even though I'm kind of doing a riff on the classic Minecraft aesthetic and taking it in a more realistic approach, I still want to have an homage to that kind of blocky style that Minecraft has, and hippos have kind of square heads when you look at them, and I just thought that would be good reference photos. And then I also used reptiles just for the skin and different things like that. But as far as the head goes, I looked a lot at hippos, and it doesn't really look like a hippo now, but it just helps to inspire different things in your sculpture, especially when they start to get stagnant. Now I'm going ahead and adding in that classic Ender Dragon color scheme, and I did add some purple on the underbelly that's not necessarily there originally, but I just thought it looked cool. And then here's a nice little turntable I rendered out just to see all the different angles. And yeah, even though this was the first sculpt I ever did, it's still definitely one of my favorites. And now on to my next sculpt, the Enderman. This one I was smart enough to actually record my process on the iPad, and again, this is an app called Forger. You're going to be seeing it a lot throughout this whole video. And I was really excited about doing this one because I really liked the whole idea of this really thin, creepy looking monster that is kind of hunched over and has really long, really unnatural arms, and just all this stuff that just looks so wrong, but also at the same time kind of cute. And or at least I guess that depends on who you ask. But even though the Enderman is powerful and can kill you if you attack it, it doesn't unless you look at it. And I always kind of liked the look of Endermen just walking around. I never really thought of them as a threat. I just thought of them as just kind of doing their own thing. And that's something that I tried to bring over in this sculpt. I just wanted it to be a weird, wrong-looking creature, but also just kind of doing its own thing. And here we are over in ZBrush, which is a sculpting program, but for the computer, and it's a lot more powerful. And it's what I finish every sculpt off in. And again, my early on skills were pretty lacking, so using some screen recording software, I set it up wrong, so you're only seeing a little bit of the actual screen here, unfortunately. But I promise it does get better over time, and so do the sculpts, I think, at least in my opinion. One thing that was fun about doing this video is just seeing how the sculpts got better over time, with the exception of one or two that I'll go over when we get to them, but most of them, I think, get better the farther in we go. And of course, I had to give the Enderman some sort of block, because for those of you who don't play Minecraft might not know this, but the Enderman likes to walk around and pick up blocks, and sometimes mess up your build, or just leave some ugly piece of dirt in the middle of your grass field, and just different things like that. So I thought, of course, I had to add some sort of block for him to behold, and I thought dirt would be a good one. And another thing you guys might notice is that his eyes are just kind of nothing there, just big open flats, and that is because my original idea was to be able to have some sort of lights inside his eyes so that they glow like they do in the game, but I never really got around to that. And next we have the spider. Now the spider is an interesting sculpt because it's not really too different from a real spider. There wasn't a lot I can do. A lot of the mobs I did early on, there's just not a lot of things you can do different than a real life spider. The Ender Dragon, obviously it's not a real, dragons aren't real. The Endermen, they're not real, but spiders, they're a real thing. So it was kind of a difficult to come up with a good design for them. And one thing that helped again was just sticking to that kind of blocky aesthetic, just kind of homage to Minecraft. It gives me a little bit more inspiration and a lot of ideas for different things. The other interesting thing about the spider is that I actually sculpted him twice, or her, whatever you prefer. And the reason is because at this point I was starting to get really invested in my recording process, and I wanted to make sure that it looked good when I would post my videos on YouTube and I didn't have any missteps. And unfortunately, I had a couple projects I was working on at the same time, and the videos for all of them got corrupted and got deleted and just didn't work out. That being the spider and a creeper that you'll see later. So instead of just hopping into ZBrush without the beginning like I did with the Ender Dragon, I decided to start over with the spider, and I think it's for the best, because you get better at things when you do them more, when you practice on them. And I didn't originally intend to practice with the spider, but unfortunately that's the way it turned out. But it turned out for the best, because I think the spider ended up looking really good. And since I sculpted it twice, the second time I went in, I thought about kind of changing the design and going for more of more sleek look, more like a Black Widow, because the Minecraft mob is black. But that wasn't really the vibe I got from it. And, again, this is just my take on Minecraft mobs, so it could be different for whoever plays the game. But I always thought of the spiders as more tarantula type, just big, thick, and hairy, and really gross looking. So that's the idea that I kind of went for as I was sculpting the spider. And of course I still went ahead and made sure that it matched the actual Minecraft spider, so painted it black with the big red eyes and things like that. And you probably see here the Enderman that I sculpted previously keeps popping in and out of frame, and that happens quite a bit. It's just because I want to have a proper scale across all my different models, so that if I print them out, they're all the proper size. And I actually found a photo online that has all the different Minecraft mobs next to each other, so you can see their heights and use that for reference. And there she is. Really happy with the way this one turned out too. And next we have the skeleton. Now the skeleton is very similar to the spider, because I had to sculpt it twice because of the mess up, and also skeletons are real things, so there wasn't a lot I could do to really differentiate this from other skeletons, if that makes sense. I didn't want to just sculpt a skeleton like a 100% anatomically correct realistic skeleton, because that didn't really scream Minecraft. So again, I started to lean on the very blocky aesthetic of Minecraft, and you can see its head is a little bit more square, and its hands and everything are not proper skeleton proportions. They're a little bit different, and I think he might even be missing quite a few bones. I just did different things to to make it look more like what I was wanting, and made his head a little bit bigger because the Minecraft heads are massive, and just different things like that. And then of course I added in his bow eventually, which helped a little bit more. But this sculpt was actually a lot of fun, especially because I was able to start to learn some new techniques. You can see he's got a lot of holes I'm cutting out of the mesh because, you know, obviously skeletons aren't solid. They're going to have a lot of holes and gaps and things. And I was able to learn some new techniques in ZBrush to accomplish that. And I want to mention I started ZBrush basically when I started working on that Ender Dragon. You know, that was one of the first times I ever used ZBrush, and so you're going to see, you know, my sculpting skills get better, but also my comprehension of this program and being able to do more impressive different things gets better throughout the video as well. But this is what I was talking about as far as, you know, not being anatomically correct. His hands should be made out of a lot more bones, and, you know, really they're just vaguely finger shaped and just kind of blocked off, and I kind of called that good for the skeleton hands, because even though I'm going more realistic than Minecraft is, obviously, I still want it to be somewhat cartoony and, you know, kind of fit the Minecraft aesthetic, and having his hands like that I just think worked well. And then I went ahead and once I was happy with the mesh, started to color it, just leaving everything pretty simple right now, just kind of a nice ivory color for the bones. Obviously, you know, it's a skeleton, and I actually had a base of a white base that I kind of wanted to look like snow, and then put in some nice lighting effects and just try to make it look interesting. And this is one of my favorite sculpts as well. Looking back, I'm actually really happy with the way it turned out. So we have what is more than likely the most iconic Minecraft mob out of everything you'll see in this video, and that is, of course, the Creeper. This one is just like the last two. I had to sculpt it twice, unfortunately, but ended up working out pretty well. One thing that I was able to use as inspiration for the Creeper, because trust me, I looked up a lot of fan art and different things to try and help give me inspiration, and there's some amazing fan art out there, but I didn't want to end up just copying someone else. You know, I wanted to come up with my own ideas. So I ended up going onto the Minecraft wiki and reading it up a lot about the Minecraft lore, and actually found a bit of trivia that claimed that creepers are green so that they can camouflage with leaves. So started looking up a bunch of different reference photos of leaves and leaf bugs to kind of see how they work, and use that as the majority of my inspiration and reference for this sculpt. It's kind of weird, like I wouldn't necessarily assume leaves with creepers, even though they are green, and it makes sense. I just never would have thought that. So this the sculpt is a little bit different than my other ones, but I think it still turned out good, and it's still clearly a creeper, which is all I was really going for. And here I kind of have this cool idea of if the creepers having like unstable hearts, and, you know, if they get set off, that's what's actually blowing up, is something, you know, maybe in their blood, or, you know, maybe this isn't heart, maybe it's a different type of muscle. I don't know. I just thought it was just kind of cool idea, because I've seen a lot of people draw fan art with TNT inside the creeper, which, you know, doesn't make sense because TNT is man-made. But if the heart was explosive, I thought, you know, that would make sense. So I went ahead and hollowed out the creeper and put in this heart, and kind of painted it up to give the effect a little bit that it's glowing. And, you know, this kind of takes it away from a classic creeper more so than even the whole leaf aesthetic, but I'm actually happy with it. I think it looks cool. And, you know, it's not like Mojang hired me to do art for their actual game. You know, this is just, you know, something out of my head, my own design, so I can really get creative and kind of just do whatever I want with it. And one thing that was a little bit of a challenge when sculpting this guy was the mouth, because the creeper has kind of this open mouth frown thing, and I wanted to incorporate that into my creeper, but I didn't want it to be, you know, just a creeper that's frowning. I wanted it to look natural, like it's just kind of how its mouth naturally hangs, which I think it worked out pretty well. And next we have the Phantom. Now, I hate the Phantoms in the game. I get why they're there, and, you know, I understand all that, but I hate them, and they're super annoying. So I was never really that excited to sculpt it, but once I started, I just absolutely love. I know I say this about all the sculpts, but I absolutely love the way it turned out. And it took me quite a while. I worked on this one a lot longer than the majority of my other ones, just because I wasn't happy with the way it was looking. And you can see here, you can actually see some of the reference photos I'm using in this video. So I, of course, used stingrays or manta rays because I think that's definitely what inspired the Phantom design. But I also looked at frogs because I just had a hard time with the head, trying to nail that and make it look good. And the head of a Phantom just reminded me of a frog, so I looked that up, and it doesn't really, my sculpt doesn't look like a frog, but again, I don't always just, copy my reference photos. I just kind of use it as inspiration sometimes to help give me some ideas for where I want my sculpts to go. And I think that it ended up working out pretty well. But one thing that I ended up doing that obviously isn't in the original sculpt is just, once I had a basic shape, I went ahead and added all this little detail, especially on his underbelly, all these little wrinkles or ribs or whatever you want to call them, just a bunch of little details all across his body. And I did that because I wanted it to look like something you would see in a nightmare, just really creepy and unnatural. And unlike the Enderman, I didn't want it to look cute necessarily. Like the Phantom, I guess if you look at its face, it could be considered kind of cute, but you would be seeing a Phantom from underneath. So I wanted this really weird, kind of gross, muscular, weird, really weird looking anatomy underneath to kind of, imagine that this would be flying above, a human or even an animal. I'd want it to instill fear, and that's kind of the idea. And here I'm using that hole cutting technique that I talked about with my skeleton to add some rips and tatters into the wings to just help add to the, creepy, evil looking aesthetic of the Phantoms. And then I hop into coloring, and it doesn't seem like it here, obviously, because this is hours of work cut down into like 5 minutes, but the coloring actually took me a long time because I just wasn't happy with the shades of blue or purple or whatever different shades I used, so I went back and forth quite a bit before I was actually happy with it, and wasn't ever really happy with it until I started adding the light and the different lighting effects, which I think just really help make it pop and makes it look really cool. And then adding in the second Phantom is what I think that's just the icing on the cake. That's why I love this whole sculpture so much. I think it just looks so cool having these two Phantoms kind of weaving in and out of each other. But yeah, just really, really happy with the way this one turned out. And then the next creature I sculpted up was the Ravager. And the Ravager was actually really fun to do because I just got vibes of a rhino and a bison. Just looking at the Ravager, that's kind of what I thought of, so I use a lot of reference photos of those two, and was able to get what I think is a pretty cool sculpt. And actually, I know it's pretty cool because this video actually has the most views out of any other video that I've put out so far. It is currently sitting at 17,580 views, which to some of the big YouTubers out there, that's not a lot at all, but for me, who currently has just over 300 subscribers, it's amazing. And at the time of posting this video, actually, it got a few views, and then I just moved on, did the next week's video, moved on, and then I went back and looked at it, and a couple months later, and it was kind of blowing up. And like I said, now it's at 17,000, which is crazy to me because the rest of my videos are 100, 200 if I'm lucky. Some of them have 20 views. It just depends on what I'm sculpting and just different things, but this video kind of went viral for me. And so if you've seen my channel before, there's a good chance that you came here because of this video here. But that's a tangent to actually talk about the sculpture itself. I did the majority of the actual sculpting on this one in Forger, mainly just because I was having fun with it, so I just kept working, and it was a simple enough sculpt that I wasn't struggling to get things done. I do eventually go to ZBrush, and that is mainly just because the armor, there's a lot of armor going on in this mob, and there was just too much stuff going on in Forger, and Forger couldn't handle it. So eventually I do move it up to ZBrush so I can finish out all the armor and the chains and things like that. But the majority of the sculpting like I said, was done in Forger. I think as far as the actual Ravager himself, not the armor, the only things I really did in ZBrush as opposed to Forger was posing him to make it look like he's kind of walking forward instead of just standing there, and also adding in all these different textures. But the base for sculpting, well, it was all done in Forger. And the armor was actually probably the hardest part for me, just because, as you guys could probably obviously tell, I like to sculpt more organic things. Well, not that I don't like to sculpt armor or hard surface things. I don't have experience with it because most things I've been sculpting are animals, monsters, just things like that. And so when it came to this armor, there's some hard surfaces, and I kind of struggled with that, making it look good. But that's something that I've actually, I think, at least gotten better with over the years. And of course, I gave the Ravager the trademark big nose and green eyes that all the Ravagers and Pillagers and Villagers have. And next we have a skeleton horse. This actually started as a old kind of dragon deer sculpture thing I did a long time ago for fun, and it just had the basic shape of a horse, so I went ahead and started with that model and just kind of roughed out the shape in Forger. I go to ZBrush pretty quick with this one just because there's a lot of thin bones and a lot of open areas, because again, it's a skeleton, so it's going to have holes and stuff just like the human skeleton, and Forger can't handle a lot of that. Forger can't cut holes like ZBrush can, and it's just a lot easier to move it over to ZBrush, depending on what your design is and just different things like that. Now, I know in game you can find the skeleton horsemen, which are, well, actually you find a skeleton horse, and if you get close to it, it turns into 4 horses with skeletons on top of them, and you have to fight them, and they try to kill you. I actually went ahead and just doing one here just because I thought it looked cooler, and I'm not even giving him his bow. I just kind of thought it was cool, this kind of somber pose, this horse kind of just walking, and this skeleton just sitting on the back, kind of, like I said, somber, kind of creepy aesthetic. That's kind of what I was going for with this one. And then we're going to go right into the Wither skeleton, and this one was actually pretty quick of a sculpt because the only thing I really had to make was this sword, which you'll see later on in the video. I use this sword a lot in a lot of my different sculpts just because I like the way it looked. I think it turned out cool, so I wanted to use it for a lot of my sculptures. But the skeleton itself, the Wither skeleton, is pretty similar to a regular skeleton. He's just taller and he's black, and he has some lines in his forehead, I think. Other than that, there's not really any differences. So I was able to bust this guy out pretty quick, and really the most interesting thing, again, is the nether brick floor that he's walking on and the sword he's kind of dragging along. And I know that in game they don't drag their swords, they run around with them and try and kill you, but I was already kind of in the somber mood with the skeleton, I guess, and I just thought it was kind of a cool aesthetic to have this guy just kind of dragging a sword along. And then the next video here is the skeleton horsemen, which is the 4 horsemen that I mentioned earlier. And this one was also pretty quick. I think I did all of these skeleton horsemen and the Wither skeleton all in one video, because all I really had to do was sculpt the skeleton horse. I already had the skeleton sculpted, and I was just able to use that to repose. And as far as the Wither skeleton goes, it was pretty similar, so there wasn't a lot of different work I had to do. I was just able to repose stuff, which still is a bit of a struggle reposing because it gives you weird geometry and things like that, but overall it's not too bad, and I was able to bust out all these pretty quick. Oh yeah, and the other thing I had to do was this diamond helmet, which, looking back on it now, I don't like it. It's one of the few things in this video that I'll go over that I don't like. I think this whole skeleton horseman diorama thing that I'm putting together here is pretty cool, just with the 4 skeleton horsemen, and I think it looks cool, but the helmet doesn't look great. And now we move on to the zombie. The zombie's one that I actually started a long time before I ever put the video out. Just because I like to sculpt in Forger when I have downtime because it's on the iPad and it's easy. So I start a lot of sculpts and don't necessarily get around to finishing them, because starting a sculpt could take, an hour or two here and there, but finishing it takes days. So I think I started it probably a month or two before I ever actually got it into ZBrush and was able to finish it out. But it was a lot of fun. It definitely was a challenging one. Really the only thing that sets this zombie apart from other zombies is the color scheme, because I matched Minecraft obviously, but this was another challenging one because, how do you make an original zombie design when zombies are so popular in movies and TVs and everything, and they're everywhere. So it's kind of hard to come up with an original design, and let alone taking something as iconic as the Minecraft zombie and giving your own spin on it. Really, I basically just had to take the classic Minecraft design and make it realistic. I didn't really add too much of my own flair into it, just because, again, zombies have been done so much, and there wasn't really a ton that I could do to make it different, Which I think is a fine line that I kind of have to walk with all these sculptures between, not necessarily just copying Minecraft exactly, having my own spin on it, but also not going so far that it wouldn't be recognizable. I want people to see these sculpts and think, oh, that's a Minecraft zombie if it was real. That's my idea for all these sculpts. So I don't want to go too far that people think, oh, that's just a zombie. They don't know that it's Minecraft, but I don't want to just copy Minecraft exactly at the same time. So it's kind of a hard line to toe, but leads to a lot of fun sculpts. And this sculpt took a long time, and I think was, when I did it, at least felt like it was kind of a turning point. I feel like I was kind of stepping up my my skills and adding a lot more detail and texturing and just different things. I think it was starting to look a lot better, and I was really happy with it. Unfortunately, the next couple sculpts don't really follow the same pattern. So the next sculpt here is the Pillager, and it's also the first sculpt that I'm going to say that I'm not happy with. Not that I don't like the Pillager or the way the sculpt is going, I just ran out of time, and it's something that has happened a few times throughout my whole YouTube career of doing these videos. I set myself the goal that I'm going to put out a new video every Monday, and sometimes I had stuff happen in my life that I wasn't able to work on sculpts as much as I was hoping, and just different things like that. And this was definitely one of those examples. I think there's definitely some good aspects in this sculpt. I think the crossbow turned out pretty well. I'm really happy with the pose. The head, I think, was pretty good. But really, the majority of it, even the head to some extent, was just unfinished. It was kind of rushed towards the end because it was getting to the end of the week that I had to work on it, and I was having to put this video out, and instead of just saying, oh, no video this week, guys, I wanted to get the video out, and unfortunately, it just wasn't that great of a sculpt. So this is one that I would definitely consider going back to in the future and fixing up a little bit. But like I said, I want to put out a video every Monday, so I never really had time to go back to any of these sculpts that I want to fix up. So, who's to say if it will ever happen, but just something I kind of wanted to mention because this whole video has been about, doing these sculpts and having fun with it. But, unfortunately there are some downsides, and you do get some bad ones here and there. And not even the running out of time. Sometimes you're just in a rut and just things aren't working out for you. But even having said all this, I'm still somewhat happy with the sculpt. I think the pose, the idea behind a lot of it turned out okay. There's just some little details that I would like to fix. In particular, the fabric, his whole coat. I just think the wrinkles on it look weird. But like the boots I think look good, his hands, his head, his crossbow, there are still good parts of the sculpt, and it's definitely not my least favorite sculpt. We'll get to that one a little bit later, but yeah, this one still has some upsides to it. Alright, now here we are working on the Hoglin, and of course starting that off in Forger before I move up to ZBrush. And one thing I don't think I've mentioned throughout the video is I generally start any sculpt off with symmetry on, meaning, you know, if I sculpt on one side, it's going to affect the other. And you can see me doing that here with the Hoglin head. And it just makes it easier and a lot quicker, especially because, like I mentioned earlier, I try to put out one video per week, so it's essentially cut my time in half if I can sculpt two things at once, you know. So I usually do that, and then once I'm happy with the sculpt, then I'll go ahead and kind of start to repose it. And I usually only do that in ZBrush because ZBrush tools are a lot more powerful, and it's just a lot easier to do that type of stuff in ZBrush. But every once in a while I'll do it in Forger, but I prefer not to. And here also I use a lot of reference photos for this one. Obviously I used a warthog and a pig, and I actually found that pig body I think looked better with this sculpt because I started trying to make the body look a little bit more like an actual warthog, because that's clearly where the head was going, but they're just thinner and wasn't really the look I was going for. And again, I do want to kind of homage to the classic Minecraft aesthetic and being a little bit blocky, a little bit bigger, beefier, and I just think a pig body worked a lot better than the warthog's body. And also on top of that, I'm obviously doing some different things to take it away from the pig a little bit. You know, I don't want to copy that completely. One of those things is the skin. I'm actually trying to make it look a little bit like a rhino's skin, and rhinos, at least to me, look a little bit like they have a natural armor, and I know it's not real armor, it looks like leather or whatever rhino skin is, but just the way it hangs, it looks like it's just really thick and protective, and that's kind of what I was going for here, because the actual Hoglin model in Minecraft looked like it had some wrinkles in that way, and just kind of worked out. And also I think it worked well with where all the spines that are going on its back are laying, kind of having it split open for those hairs to come out. And then here's what I was talking about earlier, where I was saying I prefer to repose in ZBrushes because it's much easier. And reposing isn't just simply like grabbing the leg and moving it into the position you want. Obviously, you know, you do that, you got the leg and you move it, but then it oftentimes will mess up the geometry of your actual sculpt, and then you have to go in and fix some areas. And sometimes if you stretch something too far, then you'll have to go and remesh the whole model. You know, it just depends on how far you're trying to push a specific sculpt. This one was pretty simple. I just wanted it to look like its legs are a little bit splayed out, not like it's running or nothing, just standing there, but I didn't want it to be too symmetrical, because then it just looks boring. So I wanted just a little bit going on, but I didn't want it to be like in an attack pose or anything, just kind of casual, but not symmetrical. And then of course I just added in some quick color, didn't spend too much time on this, and then moved on to my next sculpt. Which is the Evoker and Vex. And this one is the one that I've been, you know, kind of hinting towards all video. This is my least favorite sculpt I've done ever. Just really not happy with it, and that all came down to, like the Pillager, just timing. I didn't have enough time to finish it and needed to get a video out. So like, it's the start here in Forger I'm actually happy with, and I really like the way the head was coming out and the position and all those things. But you know, by the end I wasn't really able to fully render out everything how I wanted it, and unfortunately that's what happens. That's kind of part of the reason I've considered going to putting out a video every 2 weeks, or I know there's some YouTubers out there that just put out the video when they're done. It takes as long as it takes. I'm hesitant to do that because I feel like my channel grows more when I have consistent videos, but that's something I might do in the future, just because I prefer spending a lot more time on the sculpts and actually being happy with them. And I think it's best when I can learn a new technique or or something every time I do a new sculpt, and unfortunately with some stuff like this evoker, I just didn't have enough time. I didn't learn anything new. It was just, I wouldn't say a waste of time, but it was just not what I was hoping it to be. So that's something I've considered, just in the future possibly going over to take more time on the sculpts and maybe put one out every other week or something like that. But here we are in ZBrush, and this is probably the coolest part of this sculpt. I did learn how to do this cloth dynamics, not actually with this video or with this sculpt, with a previous one, but I tried it out with this sculpt, and you can kind of model out the shape of something like the robe and then turn on cloth dynamics, and it'll fall and droop realistically over the model you have, which I think is awesome. Again, I didn't have a lot of time with it, so I think if I did, I would have made his cloak look better, because it looks really thick. Doesn't look like regular material. I don't know what it would be made out of, but things just weren't fully rendered out, so it looks a little weird. There are, however, some things I am happy with in this sculpt. The head on this guy I'm actually pretty happy with. I would like to go back and render out a little bit more, but considering the amount of time I had and what I was working with it, I'm pretty happy with the way that turned out. The hands as well. Faces and hands are the hardest thing for me to sculpt, so I'm pretty happy with the way they turned out. The robe, like I mentioned, not super thrilled about that one. The vexes that you'll see here in a second, I'm actually really happy with the way they turned out. I just had one and then duplicated it and then used that same model and repositioned it. So some of the other ones don't look as good as this first one because I didn't spend enough time with them, but overall I think they look good, and I was really able to get this really creepy, almost demonic look that I was going for, because if this dude's like some evil wizard summoning creatures, and that's just kind of where I went, like summoning little devils or ghouls or something. But yeah, this is my least favorite sculpt, but from here on out they start to get a lot better. Alright, and next we have the Warden, and I'm sure all you are familiar with the Warden. If you're not, it's probably because he's not in the game yet. He's coming out in the next update, which I think is supposed to come out this winter. But he's such a cool design, so creepy, and this, I know I say this with a lot of the sculpts in this video, but this is possibly my favorite sculpt I've done. I'm just really happy with the way it turned out. And this is also my second best YouTube video to date, analytically speaking. It has, at the time of this recording, I think about 5.2 thousand views, which is pretty sweet, because again, most of mine get 100 tops. Some of them are even like 20, 30, so 5,000 is pretty good. Not quite as high as the Ravager, but the Ravager has been out a lot longer, so hopefully it keeps going. But yeah, to talk about the sculpt, super thrilled with it. The design for this, I really just referenced the actual in-game model. I didn't look at a lot of animals. I just was kind of making things up as I went. And as far as like the position and stuff, I tried a lot of things. You'll see once I get into the posing stage, because I wasn't sure like anatomically how I wanted him to go, and you'll see eventually I do put him kind of on all fours, because I was getting more of a hulking gorilla vibe with his big long arms and massive forearms, things like that. So I do eventually do that, but you can see here as I'm posing, I tried a lot of different things. I thought about, kind of having him walking through a cave with one hand on the wall, but then I realized if I did that, I would have to sculpt a cave wall, and that would be part of the print, and that would just be expensive to print that out, and also I just wasn't really loving it. So eventually I settled on this, which is a lot more animalistic, whereas the Warden in the actual model in Minecraft, he seems a little bit more sentient, whereas I feel like my sculpt is a little bit more primal, if that makes sense, which I'm fine with, because like I mentioned throughout the video, this is my take on the Minecraft mobs and what I think they could look like in a realistic form. So I'm fine to take some creative liberties, but yeah, he's not walking on two legs like he is in the actual game, but I think it looks cooler this way, at least for my sculpt. One thing I did struggle with this sculpt though is the design process, and usually when I can't come up with any cool designs or my reference photos aren't giving me any inspiration, I'll go to the Minecraft wiki to read up on lore, and that's how I found the whole thing about creepers, camouflage looking like leaves. And with the Warden, I didn't really find much. I mean, in the design, there's a lot of weird stuff going on, and it looked like maybe he had bark or something growing out of his shoulders, and I really didn't know what was going on. And the wiki, at least at the time of this video, didn't really have much information on it because, again, this guy's not in the game yet, so that makes sense. But I really just had to start making stuff up and kind of doing what I want, and I think it ended up looking cool. And especially when I start to add in all these leaves and flowers and all the plant life, I think it really brought the sculpt together. One thing that's so nice about digital sculpting versus traditional sculpting is I can sculpt one leaf, one petal, whatever this is I'm putting on his shoulders here, and just duplicate it over and over again. And it's just a lot quicker, and it's really nice for getting videos out quick and finishing my sculpts quick. And then after that, I just started to throw in some quick colors, didn't spend too much time on it, and then it's done. Alright, and next we have Steve, which was actually someone in my comments suggested that, and I thought it was a great idea. And after they suggested that, I kind of came up with this cool idea of doing Steve, but also doing all the Minecraft armors, which is something that I wanted to do for a long time but didn't know how to do it. And I thought I can just do Steve, and then my next video will be adding leather armor to Steve, and then the video after that will be iron armor all the way up to netherite. I just thought that'd be a cool idea because, you know, obviously I couldn't just sculpt the armor and just have it laying there. I needed someone to be wearing it, and then when I got suggested to do Steve, I just thought it was perfect. So this one's just Steve, just in the classic blue shirt, blue jeans, and I went ahead and gave him a wooden pickaxe, but in the next video you'll see I do eventually add in armor and swords and different things. And hopefully you could tell with this sculpt that I put a lot more effort into it. Not that I didn't try with the other ones, I put more time into this one. Same with the Warden. After doing the Evokers and Pillagers and just not being happy with them, I tried to spend more time on these sculpts. So the Warden, I think, was only a week, but this guy I actually spent 2 weeks on working on him, and just had some other videos that I was able to work on in between, some other non-Minecraft related videos. And I think it really shows, because this sculpt I think looks a lot better than some of my previous ones. And you probably saw I was sculpting what looked like a crafting table there. I eventually got rid of that because there's just too much going on, but my original idea was every time I upgraded his armor, I would also upgrade the weapon he had and the table, so the next one would have a furnace or something, all the way up till I had an anvil and an enchanting table. But it was just, there was too much stuff going on in the scene, and I always just have to consider that, you know, I might be 3D printing these pieces, and, you know, I just didn't want too much stuff going on and be too big of a piece. I think it looked better just having Steve here without anything else. And you can really tell that I spent a lot longer on this sculpt, in every single way. The hands, the fingers, the wrinkles on the hands. I really was trying to do everything I could with the sculpt. The one thing that I'm a little unhappy about with the sculpt is something that I didn't even know you could do, but you could change your perspective view in ZBrush. On the right hand side of the screen there's a little orange square that says perspective, and I didn't know that you could press that button and it would change your perspective, and which is super handy, because if something looks off or disproportionate, if, you know, his legs are too small, something like that, you could go back and forth between these perspectives. Anyways, I didn't know that was a thing, so I sculpted him and it was looking fine, and then found out through YouTube videos that you could change the perspective. Went ahead and changed it, and I think he looks a little weird, and I ended up fixing it in the next video. But the video of me sculpting Steve was already out at that point, and it's not way bad. I don't know how much people will notice it. It might just be me, but unfortunately, yeah, I feel like his legs are a little short, and his torso might also be a little short. Things just looked a little bit odd. Other than that, I am unbelievably happy with this sculpt. I think it's some of the best work I've done. His hands look good. His pants and shirts, wrinkles, clothing in general is tough for me, and I just think it turned out so good. I was really happy with the way it turned out. And I also decided to, like I said, get rid of the crafting table and putting him on a base of sand, because I thought it'd be cool to kind of tell a story with these sculpts. So this first one is like he just washed ashore, so he doesn't really have much. He doesn't even have shoes on, and all he's got right now is a wooden pickaxe, and he's just trying to survive. I was even happy with the way his face turned out, which, like I said, faces and hands are the hardest for me, so I was really happy that they turned out as good as they did. And here's the final sculpt. Alright, and here we are on our final piece. So, like I said, I just wanted to take Steve and upgrade him and give him armor, so that's what I'm doing. I'm just starting with the same sculpt you just saw me do and giving him leather armor. So cut his feet off and start turning those into leather boots, and kind of pulled his pants up because I kind of like the look when you're wearing boots and your pants kind of bunch up on top. So that's kind of what I was going for there, but really just trying to keep everything that he has the same and add leather armor on top of that. You know, I slowly want to layer more things on top, and when I go and eventually do the iron armor, I want to add iron armor or iron plating on top of the leather armor, and then, you know, diamond on top of that, and that way you can just see all the different layers of things you had to go through to get to where they are. And part of the inspiration for that was actually netherite armor. So for those of you who don't know or don't play Minecraft, you can, you know, get leather and make leather armor. You can get iron and make iron armor. You know, same with diamond, but to get netherite armor, you have to get netherite and make netherite ingots, but you actually add the netherite to your diamond armor, so it's like a netherite coating goes over your diamond or something like that. I'm not sure what the lore reason is for it, but I just thought that was such a cool idea, and that's kind of what inspired this whole thing of, you know, upgrading Steve and being able to see, you know, even when we are on netherite armor eventually, I want to be able to see his shirt, his original blue shirt, and, you know, even little bits of leather here and there underneath all of it, to show that he really just slowly upgraded his way throughout this world, just to make it feel more like Minecraft feels like when you play it. This leather armor video, much like the Steve video, was very time consuming, and I was able to do some other smaller projects in between, just like with Steve, so I was able to spend another 2 weeks working on just this sculpt. And I think it shows when I'm able to spend more time on a sculpt versus some of the other ones. You know, I think the amount of detail and everything looks so much better. Even the coloring, when I have 2 weeks to work on something, I spend more time coloring it, and color isn't something I generally prioritize, because the only reason I color something is so at the end of the video, when I show you my final sculpt, I just think it looks better if it's colored rather than completely gray. And also for Etsy, because I sell all these sculpts on Etsy, and I offer them in, you know, either plain white or gray, so you can paint it yourself, or fully colored if you don't want to paint it yourself. So it's nice to color them so people see what they're gonna look like, but as far as you know, the actual sculpt goes, the coloring doesn't add anything when I go to print it. You know, if I color in some little wrinkles, they're not going to be there when I print it out, so I really had to focus most of my time on the actual sculpting process. And I also wanted to show that time has passed with Steve himself, so you'll see bits and pieces of his clothing are ripped and tattered, and he actually has a piece of his shirt that is wrapped around his arm where he gets a cut, and just different things like that, just to help show that time is passing. And another thing that's great about spending all this time on one sculpt is I use a lot more reference photos and go through a lot more research. So I looked up a ton of stuff when it came to leather armor and how it looks, and, you know, how it's sewn together, the seams, all this different stuff, and even started to look into real leather armor back in the Middle Ages, how it worked, and I actually found a video that claimed that they didn't wear leather armor in the Middle Ages. If you see that in a movie, it's inaccurate, but even still, it looks cool. So I ended up using a lot of video game reference as well, because a lot of video games have leather armor, like Skyrim, and there's just a ton of great resources out there. You can just go to Google Images and type in whatever you want, and you find everything. And there he is. That's the final sculpt. Again, super happy with this one. And that's everything right there, guys. That's my 100 days of hardcore Minecraft sculpting. I know this was a long video, so just want to say I super appreciate everybody that watched the whole thing all the way to the end, and also anybody that's willing to like, comment, subscribe, anything like that. Really trying to grow my YouTube channel, so if anybody's willing to do anything like that, I super appreciate it. And I also just wanted to say I'm sorry if any of you clicked on this video expecting it to be a Minecraft playthrough where I survive 100 days and build massive castles and all that sorts of stuff. Again, I don't do gaming stuff, so this is a sculpting channel, and I just thought I would try and hop on this trend while it was still hot. And if you did get on here and weren't expecting it, I hope you enjoyed yourself anyway. And I also wanted to thank all my subscribers and everybody that already watches my videos, comments. I'm super appreciative of it, and I'm definitely going to continue making videos. Like I said, I put one out every Monday, so I'm going to keep doing that. And also wanted to mention that I've got a lot of requests for different mobs, and even some other stuff that's not Minecraft related. I will be sculpting all those things. I think the Iron Golem is what I've been requested the most, and that's something that I've tried like 3 or 4 times, and whenever I do make the video, you'll see all the attempts I've had. I just haven't been happy with them, but just want to let you guys know that I will definitely be doing all those things. So definitely, if you want me to sculpt anything in particular, Minecraft related, or anything else really, just let me know in the comments, and it's something that I'll definitely try. And once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.